What's up, Easy Fam? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video on ASCP vlogs. If this is your first time clicking in here, you're highly welcome to my channel. Please do well to like, comment, subscribe, turn on your post notifications so that you're notified when next I make a post. And if you're preparing for the ASCP MLS or MLT exam and you're wondering what topics you should focus on, well, do not worry because you've come to the right place. Today I'll be dropping 10 must-know topics that could make or break your ASCP exam score. So don't just sit there, grab a pen or a paper. But before that, don't forget to check out my ASCP preparatory guide, the playlist that contains everything you need to know about ASCP, from your account creation to your payment for the exam. I have my laptop here with me and I will be reading from my laptop because I need to get everything well articulated so that you guys can also follow along with me. So starting up with hematology, the first one we have here is ABO and Rhesus blood grouping. You need to know your forward and your reverse grouping. Then you also need to know about your Rhesus factor, Rhesus D and all of that. You also need to know about your ABO blood groups, and I'm talking about the Kaale's blood group, the Duffy, the I think S, and then U, all of that. You need to know about that. Those that are immune to mosquito, I think malaria, those that are immune to malaria, those that depreciate when the blood is stored over time, like all those kind of informations. You need to know that in hematology. You also need to know about antibody screens. You need to know when you are supposed to do an effusion, and when you are not supposed to do an effusion. I'm not mixing everything up. Effusion happens when there has already been a transfusion reaction or like a compatibility issue, and the antibody is already attached to the antigen, and then you need to do an effusion to extract or separate the antibody from the antigen and then study it and all of that, if I'm not mixing that up. But you also need to know about all those things, effusion and the likes of them, stuff like that. You need to know when to do some particular tests when there is some kind of incompatibility in blood. You also have to, don't forget about transfusion compatibility. You need to check about transfusion compatibility. What blood group should be given to what blood group shouldn't be given to what blood group, the general donor, general recipient, compatibility, like a mom that just gave birth, what's the first blood that should be available to the child, which is supposed to be the mother's blood, should be the most compatible with the child. You also need to know all those informations, when the mother is a Rhesus O positive, is carrying an O negative child, what you should do, ROGAM, when to give ROGAM, and all of that information. So you need to know that about hematology. So just a recap for hematology, ABO and Rhesus blood grouping, you must understand forward and reverse grouping. You must also understand the Rhesus factor. You must also understand antibody screening, and then you must also understand transfusion compatibility. So moving on to another part of hematology, we have hemoglobin electrophoresis pattern. This is another interesting point and another important point that you need to know while studying for the ASCP exam for hematology. We have that you need to know about hemoglobin A, hemoglobin S, hemoglobin C, hemoglobin E, and especially their compatibility conditions like sickle cell anemia and thalassemia. So you need to know, when it comes to sickle cell anemia and thalassemia, there is one that has to do with I'm trying to remember these things, but they are not coming to me. But just read about thalassemia and then sickle cell anemia. Very important. Know how they appear during electrophoresis. If we all know, and I believe that we all must have done genotype, and the separations when you do genotype, electrophoresis and all of that separation. There is also a pattern for all these other ones, hemoglobin E, C, D, all of that stuff. So you need to know how they appear physically and be able to read it, because sometimes they may bring the electrophoresis picture and tell you to identify if it is a sickle cell or whatever condition that might be. So you need to be conversant with that as well. So let's move over to I think homeostasis. And then in hemostasis, we are talking about like the coagulation cascade, yeah? So you need to know about the intrinsic, extrinsic, common pathway, known PT and APTT, and which factors go where. This always shows up, guys. Trust me, this always shows up. When I'm talking about your APTT and your TT, if you PT rather, and even your thrombin time. If you watched my previous video where I talked about the recent updates in ASCP, you would notice that I gave bonus points at the end of that video, and I spoke about PT and APTT, and I said you don't need to sleep on this. And I'm repeating it once again that you don't need to sleep on APTT and TT and PT. You don't need to skip on that. You need to understand everything about your intrinsic pathway, your extrinsic pathway, the common pathway, PT and APTT for your hemostasis. Focus on that, guys. Focus on the reagents for APTT and TT. Focus on their reagents as well. You don't skip their reagents. Their reagents are also important. I'm saying this for a reason, guys. So let's move ahead to microbiology. Under microbiology, we have gram staining. You need to understand gram staining and the morphology. Another free point I would like to give is that sometime last week or last 2 weeks, one of my subscribers, one of my darling subscribers, entered my DM and was asking me about key points or particular topics to focus on microbiology. And if she's watching this video, she would know that I gave her the same advice and the same, whatever I'm saying here is the same thing I said to her. And I told her that there is nothing like key points or what you should read and what you shouldn't read when it comes to microbiology, because even though it's very vast and it's wide, there is a way to read for it. You do not throw everything away, but you do not read everything, and you read in a particular manner. You read things that when you read about it in this bacteria, if you check any other bacteria, none of them react the way that particular one reacts. And this all begins with you knowing which one is gram positive, which one is gram negative, which one is a bacilli, which one is a cocci, which one is a fermenter, which one is a non-fermenter, which one is a late lactose fermenter, and all of that information. So you need to start from there, the basics. And if you are still here and you have watched my video titled ASCP Study Essentials, I don't know why I keep saying the Study Essentials, but there is a different, the Study Essentials is the name in the I think it's the name in the thumbnail, but it's not the title of the video. So if you're checking for it, please forgive me, but check the thumbnail for this. So it's titled ASCP Study Essentials. So you know the particular books that I made use of when studying for microbiology. And for microbiology, initially for the first step when you're studying for microbiology, I would advise that you read bottom line textbook, because bottom line textbook gives you a quick rundown on everything you need to know. And then once you get the basics of it, then you can start making use of these other books like Compendium and Success. If you head over to that video titled ASCP Study Essentials, you would know the textbooks I made use of while I was studying for microbiology. But for the initial phase right now, what I would advise you to do is to make use of bottom line textbook. And a comment really made me happy throughout this week. Somebody in one of my videos said she asked me, I remember I got a DM and she asked me if she could use Lab CE. It's actually the first time I'm hearing about that textbook, and I told her no, and these were the textbooks I made use of, and she said she made use of it and she passed. So thumbs up to you, congratulations, and I hope to see you preparing for your PT exam, same as me. So yeah, so that's how to read for it. Microbiology, most especially, you start with your bottom line textbook, and when you understand the basics from your bottom line textbook, because bottom line is quite straight to the point and brings out those points from them. So when you're done, studying everything from your bottom line textbook, then you can go ahead and use the other textbooks that I mentioned in my video. So before we spend much time on it, let's go to the next topic. We have biochemical test microbes. So I have already said this. So you need to study your TSI test, your urease test, your citrate test, your oxidase test, and these basic tests are high yielding questions for differentiating bacteria, like I said. So you need to be very conversant with these different tests if you want to make it past the ASCP exam. Forward from microbiology, we're moving to chemistry, and under chemistry we have enzyme markers in chemistry, and you need to learn what enzyme signals liver damage. We're talking about ALT and AST. Then pancreas, we're talking about amylase and lipase. And then the heart, we have the CK and troponins. So you need to know these particular stuff that I just mentioned. So let me go over it again. So you need to know what enzymes signal liver damage, AST and ALT, pancreas, amylase and lipase, then heart, CK and troponin. So these are very important points to note when you are reading for chemistry in ASCP exam. These points are high yield areas. They always come out, guys. They always come out. So don't sleep on these ones. They are very important when you are reading for chemistry under the ASCP exam. Then moving over to urinalysis and body fluids. I remember that I mentioned this in my last video when I talked about knowing your different casts and the way they appear under fatty cast and cholesterol cast, how they appear under polarized lights. I remember I mentioned this, and I'm going to repeat it again. So we have the urinalysis and body fluids, we have cast and crystal. So when the urine is alkaline, you need to know what you would find in an alkaline urine, what you would find in an acidic urine. Then you also know which casts are normal. Normal casts like hyaline cast is okay. I think it's 0 to 5 or 0 to 2 or something like that. Then you need to know what cast signals a disease like red blood cell cast. What disease does red blood cell cast signal? Then you need to also be able to identify crystals in acidic and alkaline urine. Like I said before, you need to know crystals, the way they appear, different kinds of crystals, triple phosphate crystal. Amorphous phosphate crystals, you would see whitish sediment, more like chalk-like sediment. But if it is amorphous uric crystals, it will come out as pink. So they can give it up in the exam that after spinning and everything, pink sediments were seen, or after spinning and everything, white sediments, chalk-like sediments were seen. So those things they give. Funny enough, ASCP gives up the answers in the questions. So it's just about you knowing bits of things, the important things in things for you to understand what they are talking about. So the question can come in like, a sample came into the lab, all of that stuff, and then after spinning came out to be a pink sediment, and then under the microscope seemed to be a dispersed sand-like looking thing. So just from the pink sediment, you should also already be thinking amorphous urate crystals. And if they mention something about chalk-like sediments, you should be thinking amorphous phosphate crystals. So stuff like that, you need to know about the different crystals, triple phosphate crystals, cholesterol crystals, and calcium oxalates, the rest of them, the ones that come in uric crystals, that come in rhomboid, for all of that, you need to know that. You need to know your cast, cholesterol cast under polarized lights, cast crystals, which casts are, red blood cell cast, white blood cell cast, granular cast, waxy cast, all those casts, transitional epithelial cells. And you need to know where you can find these different epithelial cells. There are some that line the bladder. There are some epithelial cells that line the bladder. There are some that line the urethra, all of those different things. So you need to know the different epithelial cells and where they line, so that you'll be able to come up with the correct answer and all of that. So that is for urinalysis and body fluids. Take note of your casts and your crystals and the different casts that signify different diseases, that signals different diseases. Then under parasitology, we need to know about images and features of malaria, giardia, and hookworms. They often appear during the exams. Then you need to recognize common parasites by their shape and their movements. That there's one that has jerking motility and all of that. There's one that has a lateral spine, one has a spine by the side, and I'm talking about Japanicum and all of that, schistosoma and all of that, giardia lambda. You need to also know their different stages. There are some, when they are still smaller, they have just 2 nucleus, then they have 4 nucleus, and as if their nucleus keep replicating, they have 8 and all of that. All the different entamoeba histolytica, entamoeba Hartmanni, and all of them. You need to know all of that stuff and the way they appear. as well. So this is just a rundown. Like I said, these are just key points that I'm giving. There is still a broader picture to it, but you need to know these ones because they are very, very important and high yield areas in the ASCP exam. So just a recap for your parasitology, you need to know images and features of malaria, Giardia, I call it Giardia. What's the pronunciation? So Giardia, hookworms, they often appear during the exam. So, and lastly, for the 10th point, we need to know lab safety and biosafety levels. So you need to know everything about your lab safety, PPE, you know. You may think it's boring, but it's also important. You need to know about your PPE, your hazard signs. You need to know about biosafety levels of organisms like TB and Ebola. You need to know about the biosafety levels of organisms. Then you also need to apply a bit of wisdom in some questions, because I don't want to give off my exam questions because you know it's very illegal to do so and I can have my license seized. But then you need to be able to think on your own, because my last question was a very random question. It was not from the books. It was more like if you are walking, you know, it was more like if you're working, you know, in the lab, about, you know, your lab environments, the way you should act in the lab, you know, how you should make decisions. So those kind of random questions can just, you know, pop up. Not all the questions would be from the books. Maybe the last 2 questions or the last 3 questions can just be how you handle situations in the lab and how you handle let me say a precautions you take to avoid particular situations from happening, and also how you handle things when, you know, an incident occurs in the lab, how you are able to handle it, you know, with your, how you relate with your co-workers, you know, your bosses and those working under you and all of that. Just those kind of random questions can also come up in the exam, and I'm saying it because it came up for me as well, about 3 of them or something like that. And keep sending your DMs, because I'm loving the fact that I'm getting a lot of DMs now. People are DMing me and they can testify that I reply to DMs. And don't also forget to check out the description box of my video titled the chemistry practice questions, as well as one other video. I'll put it down here because I'm kind of forgetting it. So go to the description box of those videos. You would find the study materials, because some people have entered my DM saying they need the study materials, and these study materials, I'm not holding them, they are right here and they are very much available. So just click on the description box of those videos, and then I will be sent a notification to grant you access to those videos, of which I will as soon as I can. And yeah, with that, it comes to the end of this video, and I'll see you in my next video. Love you.